Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me well? I hope you can. Um, my name is Vania Legall, and I'm one of the volunteers of Guyanese Girls Rock, and I am here to welcome you to our next panel, which is the Women of Color in Politics. Here's what no one tells you. Here's what no one tells you. I have the honor of introducing our two panelists today. They are Dimple Willabus and Candace Prince-Modeste. Just give me 1 second. All right, so Miss Dimple Willabus is a candidate for the New York City Council, Brooklyn District 46. She is a driven advocate for the empowerment of the most vulnerable members of our society through improving accessibility to quality educational resources and opportunities. Dimple has more than 25 years in the media and marketing industry and utilizes her journalistic and entrepreneurial experiences to specialize in business development and brand management. It is this background that has enabled her to develop her passion for promoting literacy as a conduit for intellectual, economic, and social mobility among the underserved and underrepresented members of our community, particularly youth, women, and communities of color. Dimple, founder and CEO of Rhythm Nation Entertainment, which partners with CEOs, organizations, entrepreneurs, and various government entities to grow their personal and professional brands. Ms. Willabus, we welcome you and thank you so much for being here with us. And Candace Prince-Modeste is an award-winning, astute public affairs professional who has leveraged her assertive and personable nature to make a positive and lasting contribution to several government and nonprofit institutions for over 15 years. Ms. Prince-Modeste holds significant public affairs experience in local, state, and federal government administration in the NYC Mayor's Office, the NYC Council, and the NYS Assembly, and the US House of Representatives. She has also gained invaluable nonprofit management and development experience through her work with the Jamaica branch NAACP, including serving as its president since 2019. She also possesses considerable political campaign experience and has served as a coordinator and poll worker trainer for the New York City Board of Elections for several years. Candace currently runs Modest Business Solutions, a technical and administrative support service company. We welcome you and thank you for being here with us. Along with myself today, three of our students, Sharona Nagamutu, Isabella Ramjeet, and Jasmine Collins, will be moderating this panel. So ladies, if you are ready, I will go ahead and just give a brief description of our panel today. Over the past few years, it has been revealed how crucial of a role politics and civil engagement plays as a deciding factor in the lives of many. When it comes to immigration rights, LGBTQ+ rights, women's rights, rights of people of color, and social justice, political involvement is the means of providing justice. Now more than ever, it is important for the youth to be civically involved and invest in the future of their society. All right, so I will now turn it over to Jasmine, who will ask our first question.
Okay, so, sorry. Miss Prince-Modeste, what is it like to be a woman of color in politics?
So good afternoon, everybody, first and foremost, and greetings to the leadership and the volunteers and members of Guyanese Girls Rock Foundation and everyone who is joining us this afternoon. Thank you for that question. So what is it like to be a woman of color in politics? It is interesting, to say the least. It can be quite annoying, quite honestly, because people, you'd be surprised in this day and age in 2021, you would think that people would understand how important, especially in a city like ours, to be inclusive when it comes to developing policies, when it comes to outreach to communities. And for whatever reason, people just assume that they can get things done without our help, that they can get things through, get support without reaching out to diverse communities, without reaching out to women, without including women and women of color on their leadership teams. I would say it's interesting and annoying, quite honestly, that we still have to remind people in 2021 just how significant women of color are, Black women, South Asian women, whatever. Like it's just really annoying, quite honestly, at this point we still have to keep demanding that we be involved when we make up so much of the electorate, and we are such a powerful voice in this community and in this city.
Thank you. Sharona, you're up next.
So the next question that we have is, why is it important for the youth to be civically engaged? And Ms. Willabus, you can start with that.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dimple Willabus. Of course, I'm standing at my campaign headquarters, just getting out of elections from June 22nd. It's extremely important for the youth to be civically engaged. It's not something that's being taught throughout New York City, and that's something I advocate strongly for. And I always recommend that parents, of course, engage your children, especially when it's time to vote. Take your children to the polls, let them understand the process, because even some of the adults, through my journey running for New York City Council, I've experienced many adults not being able to understand how to fill out a ballot. So, you know, children being involved in the very basics of understanding who their elected officials are. Some children are not even aware of who their elected officials are. They have no idea as to who the assembly person is, who their senator is, who their city council person is, who their congressional representative is, what district they live in. And I always tell people the smallest thing and the basic thing to start from is understanding where is your community board, what number of community boards you live in, and attend those community board meetings. Is extremely important to be civically engaged, because if you're not civically engaged and understand what's happening around you, then definitely that's part of being disenfranchised. You want to be engaged, you want to be involved, especially when it comes to education, policies that are being made that would affect you and your family lives, your future. So these are extremely important decision-making that you have to be involved in. When you understand something from a very early age, it tends to grow on you. So when you become an adult, then it's automatic that you automatically know that it's time for you to vote. And moreover, a lot of people overlook the primary election, which I just got out of June 22nd. A few days ago, a lot of people overlooked the primary because they said, well, you know, I'll wait on the general election in November, when not understanding how critical whoever you choose to elect as your representative for the Democratic side or the Republican side, that person will go forward in November and represent you. So it's very, very important to be civically engaged at a very young age. It really matters. Thank you for your question.
And if I could just add on to what my sister Dimple said, the reason why it's important for youth to get involved civically is because you want to be able to know who are the people who are making decisions about the things that you care about. And figure out how to get your ideas, your wants and needs across to them. So especially when we talk about local government, so our state elected officials, our city elected officials, community board, police precinct councils, there are decisions being made every single day, and it's things that you all care about. And if you want to see something change, it's not enough to just complain amongst your friends or tweet about it or whatever. Like, you have to go to the people who can actually make that change. So everything from the speed limit on the road to, I don't know, how much rent certain buildings can charge, to taxes that your parents pay, like all these things that impact us every single day. There's someone in charge of making those decisions. If you don't like what it is right now or what you're experiencing right now, you have to know who to go to see if you can get that change. So that's why it's important to be civically involved.
Thank you both. And so my next question is for the both of you. And by the way, it's very nice to meet you both. And so I was wondering, what actions should youths take in order to be engaged in their own communities?
Candace, you want to go first, or?
Um, that's fine. So there's plenty to do. So there are, I mean, I'm sure we've got folks here from Queens. I know we've got folks here from Brooklyn. Queens and Brooklyn have no shortage of local civic associations, block associations. So just starting there by joining your local civic or block association and listening to what types of issues they are advocating for. If you hear something they're talking about, or if you don't hear anything that you care about, then it's time to speak up. See if you can run for a position in one of those entities. Community boards, community boards now take members as young as 16 or 14, something like that. So definitely apply to be on your local community board, because our community boards should be reflective of the communities that they're serving, right? And our communities are not only made up of folks who are 60 and older. So there should be a teenage representation on community boards. The great thing about government too is that almost everything that happens for the most part is done in public. So watching committee meetings for city council committees, for example, watching their stated meetings, watching congressional hearings, all of that you could do online or on TV. You don't have to physically be there, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on now and figure out what appeals to you, what you don't like, and then find those people so you can go and talk to them and get something changed.
So my take on it is what I've done as a young mother. One of the things I really got involved in was the PTA, the Parents Teachers Association. A lot of people overlook the PTA. It's a once a month meeting. A lot of parents sometimes are busy with work, I get it, but it's something that parents really need to attend, because this is one of the places that parents congregate and make decisions, especially with SLT, and they vote on books and decisions for all of our children. And I always tell parents, get involved in this. And when your children see you being engaged and involved at their school, then eventually they want to get involved as well, doing community work. An extension of community work is, of course, getting involved in the county committee. There are so many different organizations, a lot of people not even aware of. I was also, just like Candace, here in Brooklyn, I was on the NAACP, the Youth Council. I was very involved in that, being able to bring some programs to the NAACP. We had the practice SAT here at Brooklyn College. But engagement-wise, it's very, very important for you to voice your opinion in a respectful manner. But more important, putting things on paper. If something is not written, a policy is not written, or something is not written down. For example, if you want a speed bump on your street, talking about it, protesting, rioting, whatever it is not going to help. What matters is what you put on paper. So it's very critical for you to get together with your neighbors, hear what they think, if they agree, and then you get a petition going. When you get a petition going, then you can be able to put forward that piece of paper with the signatures showing that everybody on your block agree that there needs to be a speed bump on your street or on your block. And that's a small piece of action that can, be taken and made into something. So to answer that question, just being engaged and involved just in school and high school, starting a club or being a part of a club, those are major ways of being, having your voice heard and being, making an impact in your community or your school. I think we lost our host, Isabella.
Well, actually, Sharon is going to ask the next question. Sharon, you can go ahead.
So our next question is, what do you believe is in store for the future of global politics? Either one of you can start.
What was the question?
What do you believe is in store for the future of global politics?
That's a very wide question for global politics. Well, first of all, history has been made for me to be standing here in Brooklyn at my campaign headquarters as the first Guyanese woman and a woman of color to run in this seat, in this district. First Guyanese running for this seat is a very bold statement in itself. How ambitious and how dare me kind of thing. So being able to look at it from a global scale, if this is a small impact in a borough and look at it from New York City and then from America and from a global perspective, women really taking, I'll attack it from the angle of women. Women are being a little more bold, more fierce, standing up against all the challenges, going against the grain and having their voices heard, being in leadership positions. So on a global scale, I believe that once we level out the playing field in terms of which I don't believe will happen anytime soon, but we still have to push forward and have women, more in the forefront, making decisions, being in leadership positions. Should not be because you're a woman or being looked at, oh, well, she's a woman, she's not capable, or she's not going to be able to do it. Let's give us a chance, give us the opportunity. And if nobody don't want to give us a chance, then we just go out there and show that we can earn the right to things just as equal. So on a global scale, I think women are really taking things to the next level. And somewhat thanks to social media, we're able to have a voice, whether people want to shut us down or not. We still have a platform of where we can voice our opinion and voice our concern. So much has actually come out over the last decade because of social media. I mean, there are a lot of pros and cons, but on a positive note, women have really shined, in the forefront in so many ways. And people have heard of so many things that have come out, whether it be domestic violence, people are able to talk and discuss how they feel. So on a global scale, really and truly, I think women are really taking a more bold approach and being a little more fierce in their advocacy work and leadership.
It's interesting because I think that this country thinks of itself as very progressive and forward thinking and so forth. But when you look at us when you compare us to other countries, we're really far behind. Certainly in terms of women in leadership, certainly in terms of environmental policies, in terms of other social policies, things like workers' rights, we are way far behind. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road, that the US sort of loses its footing as this like superpower, the super world power. Because I think people are going to start realizing that we're not as progressive as we say that we are, and we're not as forward thinking as we say we are. We still, I mean, look, we couldn't elect a woman president 4 years ago. When, speaking for myself, it was very clear that that's who should have been president. And a lot of that is in due part to a lot of folks in this country who just don't believe that a woman should hold a seat as powerful as that. So we've got a lot of work to do here. And while we may have progressive strongholds like New York City, well, in New York City to an extent, we've got some pockets, but like San Francisco, Austin, other places. But as a country, I think we're definitely in danger of losing that stronghold as a superpower if we continue with some of these like very regressive policies, even in terms of like voting rights and things like that. Like people are already leaving this country, quite honestly, in droves, whether they're going back to their place of birth or they're finding new places to set up shop in. So we definitely want to pay attention to that shift in power globally.
Thank you both so much. Jasmine will ask our fifth question. Jasmine, you can go ahead.
Okay. What made you guys decide to go into politics? Miss Prince-Modeste, you can answer first.
Sure. So I remember being in like my first or second year of undergrad, and they give you the big book with all the majors, and you've got to choose one by a certain time. So I was trying to decide between political science, sociology, and marine biology, right? Sociology looked cool, sounded cool, but I just couldn't figure out what somebody with a sociology degree does. Marine biology sounded cool. I took a few science classes. I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. I'll be a Black woman in science. I'll be cool. But it just didn't seem like something I could do at home in Queens. Like it seemed like I would have to uproot myself and go like to the Northwest or, someplace not close to home. And I just couldn't figure out, I couldn't deal with that. But then the more I thought about political science, I realized that I knew people in government, I knew people in law, I knew people in politics, and I could visualize what that career trajectory looked like and what it could potentially lead to. And then more importantly, I realized that a lot of times folks who did a political science major would oftentimes end up in positions that would allow them to directly make changes on about how people live their lives, pass laws, things like that. So I was like, okay, well, that's where I need to be. Like, I'm not just here to take up space. I want to make an impact in my community, in my world. So if I wanted to be a change agent, and if I wanted to have an impact on policy and on my community, I needed to study political science.
Okay. So why did I want to get into politics? I grew up in Guyana in a very poor community, and the pathway to getting out of my environment was getting into one of the top high schools in Guyana, of which I still credit and give and still own Guyana for that opportunity of going to a really great high school, which really opened a lot of opportunities for me of having a quality and comprehensive education and being able to play sports. After graduating from high school, well, I should retract and say that I explored everything you could think about. I was on the debate team, I was on the elocution team, I was in the Christian club, I was in every club across the board. And then I tried my hands at the beauty pageant. So I won my high school beauty pageant in 1990. You girls don't laugh at that age, just when the dinosaur walked. But yes, that was a long time ago. Don't do the calculation. But yes, I won Miss St. Joseph in 1990, and that kind of gave me a little boost in. It's like, okay. So I went on to, after graduating from high school, I was offered a lot of positions and to do a lot of modeling related stuff. I was in a lot of TV commercials, and somebody asked me to MC a fashion show, of which I did. And then I got a lot of jobs MCing fashion shows, and I was just a teenager at the time. And then somebody spotted me and said, hey, would you be interested in hosting a TV show? We want to start the first live television program in Guyana, and it would be hip hop and R&B music. I was not familiar with what hip hop and R&B music was at the time, but I ended up giving it a shot. I was like, what do I have to lose? At the time I was like 18, 19 years old. So we broadcasted the first program was broadcasted just to see the feedback. It was overwhelming. A lot of young people were so receptive to the music. Parents were not that happy, but the kids were. Over the past 6 months, after that, for the 6 months period, because of the great response, we actually started broadcasting the program live. We had the program aired live. People would call in, give their greetings, whatnot. The program went on for almost 10 years. During that period of time, because I grew up in a very poor community, I used the opportunity of my fame, so to speak, to impact my community in a positive way. So what I did, some of the kids would hang out in on the street corners in the afternoons. I asked permission of a local church if I can use the back of the yard and just paint it with a basketball court and put up a hoop for the boys to play, bought some balls. We took the cameras out there, recorded the kids as they were playing. And then that became so powerful. That one little impact, a little decision that we did that I made there, everybody wanted to do the same thing, to mirror that in their churches, their church backyard. And then those boys now ended up forming a club where it was just a competition where they play against each other, churches, so on and so forth. Granted, I was 19, 20 years old. I took money out of my pocket to buy trophies, donated cash, to kind of motivate and encourage the youth. The government at the time, back in the 90s, heard about me and noticed this and said, hey, that's really good work. We'd like to, come and have a conversation with you on being a part of the National Youth Parliament. So I became the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture at that time. Granted, I never thought about politics at this point. I'm just doing a job, if you will, enjoying what I did. But, fast forward to coming here to America after 10 years of hosting a program and having a positive impact on the youth. Coming here, just kind of adjust like everybody else when they first come to America. I started focusing again on the PTA here in the US, and then open my store, my place of business. As I stand here in Brooklyn, just a block away from where my campaign headquarters was, I had my business, and what I observed is that a lot of the people who live in the community had the same cries and concerns that I had. They felt disenfranchised. They felt as if a lot of elected officials just spoke for them and not asked them what they felt and what their concerns were. And I realized, I had my store for 5 years. We had over 5,000 repeat customers coming in. And I said, if these customers feel the same way, then maybe it's time for me to reconsider, my position. Instead of just being a business owner, maybe I should try to do something a little more. And granted, my eldest child is 28 at this time, and she's a DOE teacher. And then I remember, one of the things that always stayed with me was the importance of being. I went and I ran for something called CEC, with the Community Council District of the Community Education makes decisions on closing of schools, for schools, allotment of money for schools, so on and so forth. Thereafter, I was appointed the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams appointee, and then I worked on the Mayor de Blasio's Education Task Force. So when I had all that background, I decided, okay, after all these years, it's time for me to give it a shot of running for office. So to answer the question, it was just a buildup of things in a nutshell that led me to run for office. But more importantly, it was being able to have a universal voice and being able to give a voice to the community, which I don't believe that we've ever had in this particular district.
Thank you both for sharing your stories. And so I was wondering, you guys had already touched on this a little bit about some obstacles that women face in politics, but I was wondering if you could expand on what are some obstacles that you guys have seen or heard of that women face in politics?
I'll give you a weird one. I don't care, I can tell a story. my last job was working as a chief of staff for a city council member for over 5 years. And I realized that, so my boss was a male and the staff was probably like half male, half female. And I realized that every time the men got in trouble, my boss would pull them in the room, he would scream at them, he would curse them out, this, that, and the third. And if I messed up, nothing. Like it was, so it's like a weird kind of reverse sexism. But I feel like I would have rathered him tell me like, yo, like you messed up, this is what we need to do next. Cause I think for a while I was skating thinking everything was fine. And later on down the road, realized that there was things I could have changed. But I guess, I don't know, if he felt that he couldn't, talk to me straight. Like, I mean, I don't need anybody yelling at me or anything, but if I messed up, tell me I messed up. Don't feel that because I'm a woman that you can't come at me and say, hey, like, this is what we need to do. This is what you need to do better next time, blah, blah, blah. Like the men definitely knew where they stood with him. And I came to find out later on that I was in La La Land and didn't really realize what things could have been better in the office had he just come to me and be like, listen, this is what we need to do. So kind of like I don't know what you call that, but it that was a real experience.
What was the question? I need to repeat the question.
So I was wondering, like, what are some obstacles that women face in politics?
Well, coming out again from my election here, people believing that a woman could actually do the same thing or do it better. In my opinion, women could do it even better because they think with both sides of the brain. Scientifically, it's been proven that men think with one side of the brain, women think with both sides. So I believe that women could juggle more. They're stronger, they're more powerful. For the first time in all the years that me and my husband have been together, he actually said, wow, you run a really badass campaign. And, because really and truly, it's like you have to go into like a beast mode because you have to go against all these obstacles and challenges and hurdles. And when you're a woman, people try to treat you like if you're so soft. Really and truly, we're just as powerful because guess what? We may wear cape and not see it. It's just invisible because for me, at least, as a mother of 3, I still wash, I cook, I still take care of the home. Then I still run my campaign, I still run my business. So guess what? Us as women, we do it all and we still do great. But yes, the obstacle is that still have that line where people still believe that you're not capable. So we have to just always have to keep proving ourselves, which is frustrating to some degree. But for me, what matters the most is my 2 daughters that I have. Let them watch me and see, hey, there's been no road here before, but your mom is paving the way, not only for you two girls, but other women behind. So at least they can reference and say, well, hey, there's been a Guyanese woman or a woman of color who in this district that we live in that is very not so diverse so much in terms of politics, but at least somebody has actually paved the way for them.
You got both of you, honestly, I don't know if the other ladies feel the same way. You guys are like, have me riled up. I'm just like, all right, I want to get involved. This really is inspirational. So the girls do have a few additional questions, but I do want to plug one in before we go to the additional questions. Why, like, okay, I know you both shared why you got involved and kind of what inspired you, but Miss Dimple, why? Okay, I'm also an immigrant from Guyana. And there's so many times, you kind of feel like, well, I'm an outsider. Why, as a person that was not born in the US, you decided to get involved in US politics? Like that's a huge step. And also, Miss Modest, like you could also share, like regardless, I don't know what the stats are in New York, but in general, we look at our politicians, they're predominantly Caucasian. You know, why get involved in this space despite the odds?
So I'll just respond by telling you, just give you an example. When I was doing my master's degree, I wrote a paper on hip hop and politics. And my professor, of course, I have an accent from Guyana. My professor was a Jewish female who lived in DC and who came down once a week for my particular class because it was only like 6 students. And when I submit my paper, she gave me a B, and I asked her, why did you give me a B? And she said, I don't believe you wrote this paper. And I said, why do you not believe I wrote the paper? She said, because the way you speak, you don't write the way you speak. And I said, as a professor, shouldn't you know that you never write the way you speak? And I said, guess what? I'm from a country called Guyana. I don't know if you know where Guyana is, but I'm proud to say that I had a comprehensive and quality high school education, of which I passed on to my 3 children. I may have an accent, but don't judge me. You just make sure you regrade my paper. And she put me through the task of rewriting my paper. I rewrote it the way she wanted it, and she still said it was a B. So what I did, I submitted it to the department for review. And of course, it was not in my favor because, like you just said, unfortunately, sometimes the leadership of where you are, you're always against the obstacles as an immigrant and as a woman, especially women of color. We always have to take the back seat, seemingly, and it's so frustrating. But I still have that in the back of my head. There's something, no matter what happens in this life, I plan on making sure, these things, that the students don't have to go through this. And I know I'm not the only one that have to be dealing with this, because why should I be judged based on the way I speak? But those are some of the reasons why I'm also running, because I have to, like, again, 2 daughters and a son too, but moreover, the women also go through so much of stress and pressure. And I felt so hurt. Sometimes your hurt is channeled into something powerful instead of just, just sitting and just crying or crying to the side. My dad always says, if you have a problem with something, what are you going to do about it? Stop talking about it. What are you going to do? Do something about it. So this is me acting, putting it into action, of actually taking that bold step and running for office. A lot of odds were against me, literally. I mean, just being a woman of color, coming with an accent, coming to look the way I look, and standing, even going into a room where they're all men, Caucasian men, and you have to go to the unions where you have to be endorsed. Just being able to be in a space. One time I remember just a surreal experience, just sitting there being interviewed to get the endorsement, and I just scan around the room and smile. And I just smile because look at me, and I'm sitting in this room with all these men and just being interviewed. Is just amazing that you still have to push forward, because if we don't do it as women and mothers, then who's going to do it, right? It's paving the way for you ladies, so that at least you can say, well, Dimple did it, Candace did it, so I could do it, right?
Absolutely. It's funny. I definitely have some similar experiences to Dimple, but it's different because, see, people meet me and a lot of times they don't know that I'm the daughter of Guyanese immigrants. I don't really have an accent, only when I get on the phone like my mom and stuff, right? So, but once they find out, then you see how people really feel about you, right? So, for example, with NAACP, I've been a member of my chapter for like over 10 years before I decided to run for president. And the minute I decided, so before I ran for president, people were happy with me doing whatever I wanted to do. I could hold this position, that position. They run me ragged. I could do this, do that, no problems. The minute I say I wanted to run for president, oh, she's too young. Oh, she's not from here. She doesn't know the issues. Somebody was like, how I'm Jamaican, so I don't really represent NAACP. This is all kind of nonsense. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, at the end of the day, why you should get involved is because you're here. Like, if you were someplace else, yeah, get involved there. But you're here. You live here. You go to school here. You invest your dollars here. You should have people represent you and who understand your experience and understand your wants and needs. So don't let anybody else tell you what you should and should not be doing. Like, another reason why I ran for president of NAACP is because I realized that in our community in Southeast Queens, it's almost like half and half foreign-born folks versus folks who families have been here for a few generations. And unfortunately, there's still a big divide over here. And I know to a certain extent in South and Central Brooklyn as well. And it's unfortunate because when we get into issues, say there's legal issues or issues with the police, you think they're stopping and asking where you're from or where you live? No, they see your Black skin or your dark skin and they're making judgments about you. So that's why I ran, because I needed people who traditionally wouldn't be involved in an organization like the NAACP to understand that they're still a part of why the NAACP exists. It's not just for Southern born Blacks or Blacks who are who can trace their lineage directly to the South. It's for everybody, quite honestly, but especially for Blacks, to make sure that we have equal treatment in the law in every space that we're in. So that's why I had to run, because people needed to see that I represent the NAACP just as much as someone whose family has been here, maybe could trace their lineage back to slavery, maybe who've been involved with the organization since its infancy. I'm just as much a part of this organization as anybody else. So don't worry about where I'm from or where my parents are from. Don't worry about how I wear my hair or how I speak. My motivation and my goals at the end of the day are the same as yours. So just cut out all the nonsense and let's just focus on the work. That's it.
Thank you both for that. That spoke to me. Thank you so much. Sharona, do you want to go ahead and ask your next question?
So the next question that I have is, what advice do you have for youth who wish to become politically involved?
So my advice for any youth who wants to get involved in politics, again, it really starts with your perspective. What are you looking to accomplish? Where you want to go, where you are, where you want to go, and being able to stay on path and on track with your goals, because sometimes you get, reel off into a different direction. So it's about what you want to do. I don't know what ages you girls are, if you're in high school or graduated from high school or whatever it is, but really and truly, sometimes you start out thinking of one thing, because my background is very strong in media. I worked at CBS here when I came here after hosting my TV show, but then politics kept calling me. So I ended up going in that direction, media and politics. So sometimes you may start out having an interest in one thing and then you get going in the next direction. But honestly speaking, really and truly, if you live in a community, you're in politics. If your children attend school, you're in politics. If you're in school, you're in politics. A lot of people say, I'm not getting involved in politics. So honestly speaking, everything revolves around politics. So if you're thinking along the lines of politics as a youth, just be more cognizant of what's happening around you, the issues, especially in the local level. A lot of times what's more popular is what's happening in DC in the White House. And really and truly, we need to really come down and focus on what's happening in our community. Sometimes we see a building going up a few blocks away. Sometimes we see something happening like on the streets, but those things happen at the local community board or with your local city council members. So it's very important to be engaged locally with the local politics before we stretch ourselves to the White House, because sometimes we watch to see what's on TV and we kind of follow along with that. But it's more important to stay local government, local politics. And always remember, when you read something in the newspapers or see it on TV or listen to the news, always remember it's coming from a specific perspective. And this is coming from a media expert. I've been in media for over 25 years. Again, I have my master's in media studies, and I've worked in media, Guyana, as well here in the US, CBS. And I'm telling you from the perspective of a media expert, always make sure you pick out the meat from the bone and chew the meat and leave the bone behind. Always pick out the information that is more important to you. And also listen to, if somebody's making a speech, the news will only take out a snippet of it because they have a narrative, a specific narrative or direction they want you to hear. So always listen to that speech for yourself so you can make your own decision on how you feel about that person who's making that speech. So in the direction of, if you want to go into politics, always remember to focus on the issues that are happening in your community and how you could get involved. And again, I'll repeat, show up at your local civic association, show up at your local community board meetings. Just sit in and listen and see how you feel about it. Sometimes it can be overwhelming because a lot of times there's a lot of seniors and it seems as if they always are not going fast enough. But truth be told, as you keep going there, is also a great space for you to network, because guess what? Some of those same people who are there are the locally elected officials and the business people in the community who open their businesses, who are going there to get their license approved, or going to speak to the board, the community board. And some of those people you may bump into again, because when you're going for a job interview, more than likely you may bump into one of those same people to be the person who's going to interview you. So at the end of the day, even though you didn't ask this question, it's all about networking and seeing each other face and building relationships.
everything that Dimple said, every single thing she said. Just add on to that, you'd be surprised just walking into some of these offices and asking if they need an intern, if they need a volunteer. Most people don't turn down free labor, and make a judgment as to whether or not you can afford to volunteer with some of these organizations, some of these entities, but definitely going in and just asking if they need a volunteer, if they need an intern, a couple hours a week, a couple hours a day. You learn in a lot of these positions, you learn by just doing it. So if you can get in there and hang around, let them send you on crazy errands, it's okay. Trust me, that's how you learn.
Yeah, this is just giving me life. Isabel, you can go ahead. I saw you on mute. Sorry.
Okay, so I was wondering, a lot of women have been winning a lot of the local elections, and so I was wondering, why do you think that's important for the communities?
Because
So
we
what
make up half the community. That's why. Like, why not? We live here, we pay taxes. We got to deal with the same mess that the men deal with, but that doesn't mean that we're incapable of leading. Look at Dimple. Look at all these other folks that we're seeing breaking down barriers. Like, we deal with the same things that everybody else does. So why not? Why not?
What I'll tell you, Isabella, is a statistic just before this election. There are 51 seats in the city council, and there were only 12 women out of 51. But this election, we're literally standing, as I stand here, we're still waiting on some of the ranked choice voting results to come in. And if it is what it's supposed to, what it's projected to be, a lot more women will be elected in the city council. So the shift is going to be a little different. The ratio is going to be, more women to men. At least that's the hope. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see in July when everything is, all the absentee ballots are counted and the ranked choice voting kicks in, women will definitely show up bold and fierce, more fierce. I mean, look what's happening even in DC, who's the vice president. So we're seeing women showing up more and more, and more of us come forward and keep hitting at that ceiling. More of us keep hitting, it will crack open, and more of us will have a choice. So you young ladies, my daughters, for those of you who are women and who are mothers and who, watching, your daughters will have a better chance and opportunity than we've had, who've actually had to pave the way, dealing with all the challenges.
And when we look at it from a policy perspective too, I think more and more folks are realizing that when you do have more women, especially in legislative bodies, even in executive positions, you see the types of legislation that really do help us. So things like more funding for domestic violence programs, funding to end like intimate partner violence, funding to help like safe sex education or family planning programming, childcare. Childcare is a big expense for families, and a lot of folks, a lot of families, unfortunately, the women are the ones that have to figure it out and not so much the men. So when you have more women in positions where they can put monies towards things that specifically impact women, you'll start to see a trickle effect where more women will want to get involved because they see the value of having us in those decision-making positions.
And I don't know, not quickly, reproductive health. A lot of times men make decisions for us, telling us what we should do with our body. This is my body. Why should anybody tell me what I should do with it? So that's the thing. Men are making decisions for us. How dare you tell me what to do with my body? So if women are there, they know more because they have empathy. They understand what it's like. They're women.
Yeah, my microphone was off and my video was paused, but I'm over here like, yes. So thank you both so much, for sharing everything. I think you both touched on this a little bit in the beginning, that for a lot of people, I feel like politics isn't, like we're not involved in politics. Like politics is for the politicians. Like we just show up for like the big elections and we kind of stay away from it. But I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'm sure most of us feel a little bit more like we should be being more involved and, taking more responsibility, because once we're living, politics involves us. So our students are high school age and also like just graduated from high school. So around that age, so we have a question from the Q&A. what are the resources we can use to be better informed of our leaders and their philosophies? So before we get to the polls, how can our students and even their parents and family members learn about the candidates?
So the Board of Elections, of course, is a major resource for everything. Like all the candidates were asked to do an interview and we all had to describe our platform. So Board of Election is the way where you can find a mayoral candidates. This election, this primary election was the most powerful election of our generation, really and truly, because there was a mayoral race, the controller race, the Brooklyn Borough President, there was the public advocate, there was the, what else? And us, of course, the city council. So it's come January when, it's next January, this 2022, when whoever is going to be elected, there is going to be so many new faces. So the best place to come bring all that together is the Board of Election. All of our information is out there. And I always tell people, please read about a candidate, not from the time they've been running, but prior to when they're running, because a lot of people who are running, they come out from under the rug, they run and then they run for office, then they go back under that rug and back there and sleep again. So you have to look at people who are actively involved in their community and who are genuinely passionate about the causes that they claim that they care so much about. So always make sure you don't just read what you see, but dig a little further, do a little research on those people to make sure you understand what they're saying. Because truth be told, a lot of candidates tell you what you want to hear. It's like a love story. Let me whisper in your ears all the beautiful things. But then when they get there, then false promises. And that's why people feel so fed up and don't want to even go out and vote, because they feel as if, I don't want to vote for anybody because I feel so disenfranchised or, betrayed by the elected officials. So again, the Board of Elections is a great way. Also using Google a candidate. If you feel as if you live in Queens or live in Brooklyn or the Bronx, wherever you live, are you watching this? Just Google a candidate. The person name is Jane Smith. Just Google Jane Smith, City Councilor Jane Smith, Congress, running for Congress, whatever, and read about that person. You'll be very surprised to see the information that would populate about that individual. Feel free to Google my name and see what comes up.
And just like one quick question, can teenagers, like college, high school students and college students get involved in campaigns in any way?
Yes, because on my team, what I've done mentorship work for Brooklyn College, where I graduated from, and I mentor the students in the Women and Gender Studies department. And I've been doing this since 2016. And one of the things I'm big on is building children's resume, because as a student, I didn't have much of my resume when I graduated here in America. So a lot of people say you don't have, experience. And that's one of the things I know a lot of college students end up with, because from high school, they go to four-year college, and then when they graduate, they have no experience. So for me, I wanted to make sure I pay attention to that. So I encourage a lot of students, college students, and even high school students to come on board. We've had a ton of young people on our campaign trail. We had 137 volunteers, and some of that were actually young people, teenagers who came out, as well as my children. My younger daughter is 14 and my son is 11. My daughter Anaya, who's 14, most of you heard her earlier, she spoke. She's the youngest author in the US to write a chapter book at 8. She's 14, she writes for the newspapers. She's my data queen. She's the person who inputted almost 47,000 people into our database. So giving children a task and trusting them that they will do the task, they will deliver. So you girls who are in high school, we would have loved to have you on board, and we welcome everybody, because trial and error comes with experience. You have to be able to make your mistakes there. So we encourage everybody to come aboard. We had a lot of young people, college graduates, high school students on our team.
Yep, so definitely, Google is your best friend. Please use it. Certainly every candidate running in this day and age should have a website. Certainly every government entity has a website, but Google definitely will help fill in some of those blanks. Campaigns, I know to work on most campaigns, you have to be 18 years old. And I put a link in the chat. The Board of Elections actually does now hire 17-year-olds to be poll workers. I think you can only do like half a day, but you can apply to be a student poll worker through the Board of Elections. It's $250 for the day. And it's fairly straightforward work, but they're really looking for young people to help with some of the newer devices that they're using that some of the seniors are having difficulty with. So they're really looking for young people. So click on that link before we finish and fill out the application if you're 17 and over, or if you just want to apply to be a regular poll worker. I've been doing it since 2008. It's it's really fulfilling. You really get a sense of what goes on at polling sites, what goes on behind the scenes in terms of preparing for election day. I really enjoy it. And if you're curious about election administration, just about government administration in general, working as a poll site poll site worker definitely is a good way to get some hands-on training and experience.
Thank you both so much for just lighting a fire under all of us to get more involved, and also just to share with our teens and even the volunteers and everyone in attendance, you know, that politics does involve us and that we should and can be getting involved today.